yourself. This is human nature. You feel good about yourself, someone's smiling at you. They have their attention on you. Islam says in Surah 49, verse 11, "O you who believe, let not a people ridicule another people, for they may be better than them, nor shall a woman ridicule another woman, for they may be better than them, nor shall you mock one another, or call each other by names. Evil indeed is the reversion to wickedness after attaining acknowledgement. Anyone who does not repent, then these are the transgressors." So it says, don't mock, insult, use bad words. If someone looks funny, don't say, "Oh, that guy looks funny," or "look at him," whatever. You know, and make them feel bad about themselves. You know, maybe they were born with a disfigurement, or they had an accident, and you now mock and you make jokes. All comedy you see on TV, or even shows or the newspapers about celebrities and whatever, all about mocking, insulting, and depreciating people, depreciating human beings. Now, how can a society claim that they respect human beings when all the culture is all about, a lot of it is about, the common popular culture is about demeaning and depreciating human beings? Islam acknowledges that human beings deserve respect. It's part of human nature. If you don't respect someone, if you humiliate someone, they react. This is law of nature, as you see throughout the world. If people who are under colonization, they will fight back. Because they feel humiliated, they feel not respected, they will fight. And this is human nature. So Islam says respect people. Doesn't matter if they deserve it or not. It doesn't say if they deserve it, then don't mock them. No, it says you don't mock them, whatever, regardless. Rights of neighbours. As I said before, the Prophet Muhammad said that if you sleep while your neighbour goes hungry, you don't have any faith, you don't believe. And again, as Professor Daniel Bell, a lecturer in political science at the University of Singapore, what he confirms again about liberalism is that liberalism, it is claimed, contributes to, or at least does not sufficiently take account of the negative social and psychological effects related to the atomistic tendencies of modern liberal societies. There is undoubtedly a worrying trend in contemporary society with a callous individualism that ignores community and social obligations, and liberal theory does not seem up to the task of dealing with that problem. Now, I'm not here to bash liberals or attack liberalism per se. I'm just saying that this is not a person, this guy's not a Muslim, he's just a social theorist, and he's acknowledging this. That there is a fundamental problem with individualism, which causes people to basically only be concerned with their own impulses and agendas, and not with other people's. And this has to be dealt with, otherwise it will cause trouble. And lastly, Islam believes that men and women should cooperate with each other in the general society for, in many things, business, education, intellectual research, even warfare. We see a woman went up to Prophet Muhammad wants to participate in a battle, and then the Prophet said, "Oh, fine if you want to," and so on. So this is so women aren't restricted, like you see. A lot of the things you see in Muslim countries today are the result of old, almost pre-Islamic traditions, or actually a lot of them are pre-Islamic traditions, being implemented today, which are not Islamic. You know, where women don't deserve education, are not given education. This is not Islamic, considering that the Prophet's wife, Aisha, she used to give sermons in the Prophet's mosque, in the pulpit, in full view of all the men, hundreds of men, and she was giving sermons and teaching about Islam. And 40% of the narrations that we have about the Prophet Muhammad is via her. It's via her. She narrates what the Prophet did. And it's through that chain of narration that we actually know 40% of the Prophet's sayings and actions. So a woman was key to 40% of the prophetic tradition. This is something you should bear in mind. It's quite surprising. And again, one scholar wrote a book called Muhaddithat, which was a research of Muslim women scholars throughout history. And just in the early classical period of Islam, the person counted 7,000 Muhaddithat, which is women who preserve and transmit the traditions, the prophetic traditions, the texts and scriptures related to the Prophet's actions and sayings. 7,000, and he stopped at 7,000 because it was going to go on forever. He just stopped at 7,000 and documented it, wrote books, you could even buy it. So, and there were cases where, many cases in fact, that women scholars were highly sought after. Male scholars would love to marry them. And there was one interesting case where a male scholar was asked a question by a bunch of guys around him. And he's like, one second. He went to the next room, came back with the answer. And he did it a couple of times. And people said, like, Sheikh, why did you go into the other room? Why are you, and then before you give him the answer, and he goes, I'll just ask my wife. So, but we don't hear about this. We don't hear it. This is a great travesty. We only hear about it when one traditionalist person with his own pre-Islamic traditions oppresses a woman or does honor killings or female circumcision and says, and then this gets front page news. Even though none of these things are from Islam, from any Islamic text at all whatsoever. Secondly, the institutions, I think, or rather I'm not going to now the systems of how Islam deals with, I think, the real bread and butter of society, the economic system. Now, I'm going to try and be very brief, and please ask me loads of questions about this, especially all the economic students, which are no doubt lurking in the audience. The Quran says, and I'm to paraphrase it, that you should worship God and you should seek the hereafter, but don't neglect your worldly life. So don't say, I'm going to be in a ascetic, run off to a cave somewhere, and just hum to myself and forget about economic transactions. No. We should engage in developing this material life for the sake of God. So, if I want to now develop hospitals or research new cures, I'm doing this to help people. Why? Because it's my duty to help people as a Muslim. So that's what you saw, the flowering of medicine, technology, science, and development during Islamic civilization, because they were all fulfilling their duty to God, which is to better the life of this world for the sake of gaining the pleasure of God, because God tells us to help fulfill the needs and allay the problems of our fellow mankind. The capitalist economic system, very interesting economic systems, they believe that resources are finite, which is true. And they believe that human wants are infinite. So this is the fundamental economic problem, they call it. It's called the economic problem, is how to reconcile finite resources to infinite human wants. And they try to say that we have to maximize production. We have to keep maximizing production to try to, we'll never do it, but we have to keep on maximizing production as much as possible. And hopefully, through what they call the trickle-down effect, whereby if you imagine society as a pyramid with the rich people on top and the poor people on the bottom, it will go through the rich people first, because obviously they're actually owning the capital, means of production, so on and so forth. It will eventually trickle down to everybody. Obviously, as Karl Marx rightly noted, that the rich just buy more and more and more of the resources and the wealth, and their spending power increases exponentially, and you get a concentration of wealth from that. Whereas Islam says something else. Islam says human needs are limited, not infinite. Because we don't believe in satisfying any impulse randomly. So no, your needs are infinite. Food, clothing, shelter, and energy. How much of it do you need? How much food do you need? How much shelter do you need? How much clothing do you need? You know, these things are finite. To meet a minimum standard, these things are finite. So Islam's concern is how to distribute the resources of the earth so that it can fulfill all these needs and requirements. Additional to this, obviously, is healthcare and education, but that's dealt with in a different section. The Prophet Muhammad said, the son of Adam has no better right than he would have a house where he may live, a piece of clothing where he may hide his nakedness, and a piece of bread and some water. And another narration, he said, Muslims are partners in three things: water, pastures, and fire. And this is something very, very interesting to look at. The first narration, the son of Adam has no better right than he have a house, clothing, and food. It didn't say Muslims are the only ones that have the right. It says the son of Adam. And last time I checked, the son of Adam encompasses Muslims and those who are not Muslims. So as a Muslim, who we believe in duty, we have a duty to try and provide for all of the people of the sons of Adam and daughters of Adam to fulfill their basic requirements of food, clothing, and shelter. So Islam focuses on distribution of wealth, not just production of wealth. Because production comes naturally. When there's deficit, someone will produce it from the ground, mines, arable farming, so on and so forth. Public wealth is also an interesting thing. The Prophet Muhammad said, whoever prevented the excess water to prevent with the excess pasture, Allah will prevent him of his bounty on the day of judgment. What it means is if someone is getting water from a well or has a particular spring near his field, and he prevents some of that water from, the excess of that water from irrigating his neighbor's land, then this person obviously is committing an immoral act by doing so. Why? Because there are resources which don't belong to private companies. Gas, oil, water, this is public resource. It belongs to all of us. All of us, not just some. Not just some who are going to sell it to you at a marked up price, and if you don't, they'll cut off your water, cut off your gas, cut off, your electricity. You have a right to this. It's your resource. How dare they privatize it themselves? Yes, fine, people can charge for just getting out of the ground and something, but the resource belongs to you. And whereas in capitalist countries, it's owned by private corporations and so on. As for communist countries, well, that's one of the things they got right. But that's a different discussion. The Quran says in Surah 2, 275, God has permitted trade and forbidden interest. So God has permitted trade, we can obviously exchange commodities and negotiate price. However, God has prohibited interest, where I give you some money and then you give it back to me, plus a markup at some time. This, by all economists will agree, has caused immense concentration of wealth, has led to what we call these boom and bust recessions, and this is only exacerbated by a stock market, which is a parasitic economy whereby you buy and sell the contracts, essentially, the partnership contracts. When you have, business forms where you make a contract for everyone to work together for a certain profit, buying and selling shares in this contract is now an economy itself, even though it's not a real physical economy. So a business can go from boom to bust, even though nothing has physically changed of its commodities or products or staff, which is completely absurd. Islam doesn't believe in this. Islam also prohibits hoarding of wealth. It says that you must, unless you're setting up to buy something, you must spend or invest your money. You can't just hoard it and do nothing for no reason. You're not going to get interested on it anyway. Now you think, okay, what's that about? Okay, that sounds like a small issue. But think about this. What if every day all the money in the market that's out there is reinvested or spent back into the economy, mandated by a metaphysical principle? So it's not just consumer confidence. We have to raise consumer confidence to get them spending back in the market. No, people as a religious obligation will be spending or investing back into the economy every single day. It's a much more dynamic and much more fluid and stable economy compared to what you see in capitalist countries. Lastly, as is the case, there will be wealthy in a Muslim community. Having wealth, being a rich person, a Muslim in a Sharia society, is not a problem. That's fine. Yeah, that's not a problem. But as an extra protection for the poor people, as extra protection for people that don't have, there is what we call zakat. And zakat is a kind of alms tax, which Muslims must pay. Muslims, not non-Muslims, Muslims must pay, and this has to go to people who are, as defined in Surah Tawbah, verse 60, the poor, the needy, those who collect them, those whose hearts are to be reconciled, to free slaves, to debtors, and in the way of God, and for the wayfarers. So if you're in debt, the zakat money collected by the state will try to get you out of debt. If you are a slave, the state will try to buy you out of slavery. If you are the poor and needy, of course, the money is going to supply you the means to supply yourself. If you are a wayfarer, you're a traveller, and you've lost, you don't have much money, you can't get back home, the state will provide you zakat money to get back to your home safe and sound. And as the Surah Al-Hashir, verse 7 said, illustrating the purpose of the Islamic system to distribute, it says, lest wealth circulates among the rich amongst you. So it doesn't want to see the wealth circulating only amongst a small proportion of the society. It wants to see it on everyone. And as you can see, within the concentration of wealth statistics, that 70% of the world's wealth is owned by 77% of the population. Although other studies have made it even more outrageous figure, but I'm going to go with the most moderate figure in case I'm challenging that. So Islam is prohibited interest. So it allows everything except interest, and also gambling, because gambling also causes much social problems. Now, in liberalism it says, well, we believe in the free market. We have a free market.